Hello, everyone. I hope you all had a great weekend and now ready to make some room for new information. So, today's module, in the second module, you will learn about the principles of art and design, or um, art and or design. Okay, so please keep your focus, take some notes, or keep a copy of the notes as soon as it's available so you can review or study it offline. Okay, so artists design their works by controlling and ordering the elements of art in some way. When trying to combine these different elements into an organized whole, they use or apply certain principles or guidelines. These principles of art are balance, rhythm, emphasis, proportion, unity, variety, and harmony. Now, a unified design, which takes a skillful blend of elements and principles, results when all the parts hold together to produce the best possible effect. Without this overall principle of unity, the work would fall apart or appear disorganized and confusing to the eyes of your viewer or the viewer. Um, So, the following principles I will be discussing in a few should help you determine how the elements of art can be used to create art. Remember, each of these principles describes a unique way of combining or joining art elements to achieve different effects. Okay. So we deal with balance daily as we know and or expect it to function with gravitational forces. Gravity is a universally and intuitively felt experience. So normal activities like walking, standing on one leg or tipping back in a chair reveals our intuitive need for balance. When we are off balance, we have the anticipation that gravity will resolve our dilemma. That is, we will fall over. So balance refers to a way of combining elements to add a feeling of equilibrium or stability to a work of art. Balance can be of four kinds. There's symmetrical balance, asymmetrical approximate symmetrical balance, asymmetrical balance, and radial balance. So, symmetrical balance means a formal balance in which two halves of a work are identical. One half mirrors exactly the other half. This type of balance occurs when equal or very similar elements are placed on opposite sides of a central axis. The axis may be a real part of the design, or it may be an imaginary line, such as what you will see in figures 1A and 1B in the next slide. Now, observe the two examples here. Figure 1A, with a vertical axis, there is equal visual weight on both sides here. On figure 1B, the artists also use a horizontal axis, arranging the balance between top and bottom. So let's dive a little bit deeper about what formal balance is. So, formal balance is the simplest and easiest type of balance um, to recognize and to create. As you can see here on figures 1C, 1D, and 1E later on the next slide. So, after you find the axis, all you have to do is match objects on each side and place them equally distant from the center. On figure 1C, this is an unusual large nose ornament. It was designed using formal balance to fit the balance of the human face. It was fitted to the pierced septum by the clips at the middle at the middle of the top edge. The beast heads, if you've noticed, on either side, rise up over the cheekbones. That's how it was positioned when worn. On figure 1D, this body ornament is is symmetrical to match the symmetry of the human body. The symmetry communicates dignity, which was the expressive intent of the artist who designed the adornment. Moving on to the third example, on figure 1E, a formal symmetrical product that relies on shape, size, and an arresting imagery. The frontality of the center section draws the viewers or spectator into the composition. Now, the strong appeal of symmetry has for us may be related to the bilateral symmetry of the human body. Things closely associated with our bodies, such as clothing and furniture, are usually symmetrical. Most traditional architecture, especially public architecture, is symmetrical. And you will see that here on the example, on figure 1F. So this image of the entrance to the Federal Reserve Building in Washington, D.C., it is very important looking if you try to observe it. The symmetrical arrangement of vertical and horizontal shapes here gives the building a secure, stable look. On figure 1.1F, you'll notice the architect's symmetrical arrangement of shapes on the front of this house. So just imagine a vertical axis through the center here. Do you see how balance has been achieved? So next we talk about approximate symmetrical balance. So the potentially boring qualities of symmetry can be reduced by deviations from its repetitive nature. Balance is still the goal, and the solution is similar. But the artistic components, instead of being identical, are very different. They are, however, still positioned in the same manner. The apparent weights of the components must be equal or balanced out. So on figure 1G here, this painting, entitled American Gothic by Grant Wood, has become a symbol of what people mean when they talk about the good old days. It represents a Midwestern farmer and his daughter. The models were the artist's sister and his dentist. By using formal balance, Wood gives the work a stiff, serious mood, but by switching to approximate symmetry rather than pure symmetry, he adds the nostalgic, folksy look. On figure 1H, um, entitled this artwork entitled Salangi Raga by Ragamala, shows approximate symmetry. While the format is symmetrical, the central image is rendered as asymmetrical by modifying the positions of the trees, figures, and elephant. The vertical axis is still retained here. In this next example, approximate symmetry could be said to be the subject as well as the form of this composition. Excuse me. Okay, so the third type of balance is asymmetrical, or also known as informal balance. So, informal balance gives the viewer the same comfortable feeling as does formal balance. Informal balance involves a balance of unlike objects. This is possible because two unlike objects can have equal visual weight. As you can see here on figure 1J. Um, so take a good and closer look at this painting by Thomas Eakins entitled Baby at Play. The complex shapes of the wagon and the child are informally balanced by the potted plant and the foliage in this casual scene. Informal balance gives this composition the look of a snapshot or candid. So, informal or asymmetrical balance creates a very casual effect. It seems less planned than formal balance. However, it is not. What appears to be an accidental arrangement of elements can be quite complicated. Symmetry merely requires that elements be repeated in a mirror image. Informal balance, however, goes beyond that. Artists consider all the visual weight factors and put them together correctly. Many factors influence the visual weight or the attraction that elements such as hue, intensity, texture, position, value, size, and shape in a work of art have for the viewer's eyes. There's size and contour. A large shape or form appears to be heavier than a small shape. Several small shapes or forms can balance one large shape. And you will see that here on the example on figure 1K. Okay, if you take a look at the painting, this is done by Edward Hopper entitled First Row. The many small shapes in the lower right corner of this painting balances the large shape of the stage with its closed curtain. Here's another example. An object with a complicated contour is more interesting and appears to be heavier than one with a simple contour. A small complex object can balance a large simple object. In this example, this is a wedding portrait of Frida Kahlo and Diego Rivera. Frida here depicts herself in the ribbons, jewels, and Native American dress she often wore. Her small body, enveloped in all the ruffles and folds, balances Diego's solid, heavy form. And then there's color. A high intensity color has more visual weight than a low intensity color. The viewer's eyes are drawn to the area of bright color. So, what does this mean in terms of balance? It means that a small area of bright color is able to balance a large area of a dull, more neutral color, as seen in the stained glass window in this figure. And then there's warm colors. So warm colors carry more visual weight than cool colors. Red appears heavier than blue, and orange appears heavier than green. This oil on canvas painting by Jean Honor Fragonard, entitled A Game of Hot Cockles. In this painting, he balances all the cool low intensity colors with the warm, bright red on the dress in the foreground. And then there's value. The stronger the contrast in value between an object and the background, the more visual weight the object has. So black against white has more weight than gray against white. Sorry. So dark values are heavier than light values. A dark red seems heavier than a light red. If you look at figure 10 here, this is an oil on canvas by painted rather by Giorgione, entitled the Adoration of the Shepherds. The face and head scarf of the Virgin are no lighter in value than the infant on his blanket or the shepherd's white skirt. Her face stands out so much more because it is placed against the dark value of the cave's interior, while the infant and the shepherd are placed against the mid-value tan of the ground. Then we talk about texture. As you know, a rough texture has an uneven pattern of light highlights and dark irregular shadows. So, for this reason, a rough surface attracts the viewer's eyes more easily than a smooth, even surface. This means that a small, rough textured area can balance a large, smooth surface. In a poster or advertisement, a block of printed words has the quality of rough texture because of the irregular pattern of light and dark. Poster designers must keep this in mind when balancing words and other visual elements. With position, in at least one way, the two-dimensional arrangement of visual components is informed by our real-world experiences with weight and physics. So consider the playground seesaw. So children playing on a seesaw quickly discover that two friends of unequal weight can balance the seesaw by adjusting their positions. The heavier child moves toward the center. The lighter child slides toward the end. So the board is then now balanced. So what this means is the closer a visual component is to the edge of a composition, the heavier it becomes visually. Likewise, the closer a component is to the center, the lighter it becomes. So in this visual art, for example, a large object close to the dominant area of the work can be balanced by a smaller object placed far from the dominant area. So as you can see here, a large positive shape and a small negative space can be balanced against a small positive shape and a large negative shape. So in figure 1Q, you will notice here the large wave on the left. It is balanced informally by the small triangular shape of Mount Fuji in the distance. Notice the shape of the negative space of the yellow sky. How does it help to balance the positive shape of the wave? How do the three fishing boats affect the balance of the work? Why do the men sit so low in the boats? What does their position have to do with balance? And how do the many small curved shapes in the white foam of the large wave affect the mood of the work? So, asymmetry achieves visual control of contrasts through felt equilibrium between parts of a picture. There are no rules for achieving symmetrical balance. I mean, asymmetrical balance. There is no central point and no dividing axis. If, however, the artist can feel judged or um, or estimate the opposing forces and their tensions so that they balance each other within a total concept, the result will be vital, not just vital but dynamic and expressive organization on the picture plane. So for example, here on figure 1R, um, so this is relying, the artist is relying on a felt balance, um, as well as using as well as the artist uses this large open bluish gray area to balance smaller but more attractive areas at the top and side. Linear information is balanced against brush textures, and horizontals and verticals are countered by strategically placed diagonals. Okay, now let's talk about radial balance. So, radial balance occurs when the forces or elements of a design come out, come out. So, radiate or radiating, okay, from a central point. So, the axis in a radial design is center point. In almost all cases, the elements are spaced evenly around the axis to form circular patterns. The rotation of these forces results in a visual circulation. Okay, take a look at these two examples here on the screen. So, radial balance is really a complicated variation of symmetry. While symmetry means only two matching units, designs with radial balance may involve four or more matching units. On figure 1S, notice how the radial design of this tray starts with four matching units at the center. As the design moves outward, the repetitions become more complicated and increase to eight around the rim of the tray. On figure 1.1s, it shows a this just shows a linoleum print design using or applying the radial balance. Okay, so the design seen in a kaleidoscope here on figure 1T is a good example of radial balance. The continually changing shapes at the end of the tube radiate from a central axis. Elizabeth Garrison used the traditional radial design of the Star of Bethlehem quilting pattern to represent the light of liberty. She designed this quilt to celebrate the anniversary of the Statue of Liberty. Okay, and then lastly, um, I will talk about the factors which contribute to a sense of balance. So, these are the factors. There's position or placement, um, which refers to objects or object closer or nearer to the axis, or viewers seems heavier. As for the size as a factor, so big usually equates to heavy, small is understood as light, and with regards to proportion, it's pretty much closely related to size in its essence. As for direction, so for example, upward equates to light, and the downward direction tends to look or seem heavy. And then lastly, there's quality. So for example, when it's coarse or rough in texture, it may seem visually heavier. Dark, warm colors, stronger in intensity, seems heavier, as if it almost expands. Big decorative patterns seem heavier than dainty prints. Okay, so those were the common factors. All right, so that was the last slide. Next meeting, we will talk about the types of lines and their expressive power. This is all for today. I hope you've learned something new. Make sure to not miss any of the lectures or studying through the notes that I provide weekly. That is, if your internet connection is really such a struggle or that bad, in order to keep up and able to do the respective projects that comes after the entire module has been discussed. If you have any questions, please feel free to raise it on the discussion page. Okay? So until the next one, have a great week ahead, everyone.